You are listening to PT on Ice, the Older Adult, a collaboration between the Senior Rehab Project and the Institute of Clinical Excellence. This is a rebroadcast of an original episode that can be found at ptonice.com.
Christina, Pratt, if you're listening to this, we need to come up with a cooler name than Older Adult Wednesday. I feel like we can be a little more creative than that. We'll have to brainstorm a little bit. I'll just wait a few minutes, let people roll in here on this lovely Wednesday morning. I'm excited for today. It's our annual chili cook-off at the home health agency that I work for. So this is always an interesting day when you get, dozens of people just miserably stuffed with chili, and then you send them out to people's homes to do home health visits. And we all have, gastrointestinal issues, and our patients aren't always happy about that. But yeah, we have a good time. Let's get into this. So once again, my name is Dustin Jones, home health PT, faculty with the Institute of Clinical Excellence with the course Modern Management of the Older Adult. Christina Previtt, formerly Novak, and I have been getting on the mic every Wednesday. So last week she talked about frailty, which is a very, very interesting topic in the world of geriatrics. They're trying to define it better and better, and to be able to screen for it and how to reverse it. So Christina, I would listen to that episode if you haven't listened to it yet, because she does a really great job of defining it and showing some of the different measures that we use to determine if someone is considered frail or pre-frail. But she mentioned it's a clinical geriatric syndrome, but it basically, if you were to boil it down, it's a vulnerability to external stressors. Is kind of a dumbed down way to put it. It's not necessarily just physical. You need to keep that in mind, but we often deal with kind of the physical, side of things. But in many situations, we can reverse it. We can reverse frailty, and one of the best drugs that does that is exercise. In particularly strength training is a really, really helpful thing that we can do. As the weeks go on, we're going to dive into, strength training, how to apply it in a very safe but effective way with older adults, how to dose it, how to progress it, what types of exercises you want to do. We're going to dive into that more and more. But before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of that, I wanted to talk about what I perceive as a big issue when we are working with older adults and want them to lift heavy things or want them to do, hard work. And that is, therapeutic alliance. And the way I like to view this is getting the W, getting the early win, so I can get that buy-in and get that therapeutic alliance with that patient, so we can do things that they may not be comfortable, doing, or something that's very new to them from what they've done before in therapy. So I'm going to dive into kind of a couple categories of what I'm thinking about when I'm trying to get that early W and working with my patients. So the first one that I want to talk about is establishing credibility. So with, I'm in home health, so I'm going to speak from my experience, but I think a lot of people could, echo what I've experienced in terms of somewhat of an age gap, between some of our older patients. So, I'm 31. A lot of you all listening may be in your 20s, 30s, 40s. And if you're working with someone in their 70s, 80s, 90s, there's a bit of an age gap there. And sometimes it's an issue. A lot of times it's not really. But if it is, I feel like we need to work hard to establish credibility and trust and therapeutic alliance with our patients. And so there's a few things that I think about. The first one is I feel like we should really work hard to grasp what this person has gone through. If you're new in our field and have not been around the block and understand kind of the medical meat grinder healthcare system that we have right now, it's tough. I mean, a lot of these patients that are coming into our clinics, or we're going into their homes, they've had countless doctor's visits, countless, bouts of PT, countless trips to the emergency department, that may or may not have been good experiences. A lot of times their kind of norm or their standard is, so-and-so is going to come in. They may listen to me for 3 or 4 minutes. They're going to be typing on their computer, and then off I go to the pharmacy to get my prescription, or, whatever it may be. But typically it's not a very good experience, and they've been told some very negative things, what's wrong with them for decades and decades, and that has an impact on how they view themselves. And so we need to be aware of that. But I think we can capitalize on that, because if we come in and we are completely different from any other interaction they've had in the healthcare system, we can stand to gain from that. So I think this all starts with the first phone call. So in home health, I have the luxury of, I'm typically the first point of contact with my patients. So I call them to say, hey, can I come to your home to do, an evaluation? And I know Jerry Durham talks a lot about this, but that phone call is priceless. It's their first contact with the company, first contact with me, and I can demonstrate that I care about them, that I want to hear their story, that I want to know what the problems that they have, that they're worried about, and how we can address them. So that first phone call, which I know a lot of you all don't have that opportunity, but I feel is super, super important to make that first impression to establish credibility. The second thing that I'll do, and this is unique to home health, but I take my shoes off when I get to the front door. Home health typically, doesn't have a good rap about going into people's homes that, may be unclean, to say the least. But when you come into someone's home and you show that humility, you take your shoes off, you're respecting them and their space, and you recognize that you're a guest in their home, that goes a long way to them to respect you and go towards that initial, buy-in or therapeutic alliance. And then going from there, just all the stuff we talk about, listening, let them know that they're heard, looking at them, directly into their eyes and not just over at your, laptop or iPad, making sure you're documenting everything. All those things that we talk a lot about here are super important to help establish credibility, to get buy-in, and to get that therapeutic alliance, to have the freedom and the ability to do things that they may not be, necessarily comfortable with. So establish credibility is the first one. There's lots of ways to do that, but I feel like we need to be thinking about that. The second thing is to create quick change. So, here in the PT on Ice world, we talk a lot about asterisk signs. So what is that, asterisk sign with that patient? So let's say, they come in with shoulder pain. They're flexing their shoulder. Ow, that hurts. I only go to, 100 degrees. And then you do your magic, whatever your magic is. And then, they lift it up to 140 and their pain went down by like 3 or 4 points. And at that moment, you are awesome. They really start to believe like, wow, this guy's good, or girl. They know what they're doing. And I can't overstate the value of that in that first interaction. But when in the older adult patient, pain may not be present. Home health, that's, typically the case. Skilled nursing facilities, acute care, maybe an outpatient in some instances, but pain isn't always a big issue why people are coming to see physical therapy. It could be just they're not able to get up off the toilet. They can't get out of bed. They're having to walk with a cane now. It's more related to function and just their capacity. But if that is the case, if pain is not present, that does not mean that you need to ignore their asterisk signs. They may be more functional asterisk signs that may not be related to pain. So we can still test and retest to show quick change and establish our credibility and get that buy-in or get that early W. So a very common example that we can talk about is a sit to stand. So getting up from a chair, whatever that chair may be, a lot of people can have difficulty with that, especially being able to come up to standing from very, different types of chairs. And so I just want you to think, what can you do right now to impact that person so they can now stand up out of the chair, as before they came and saw you, they weren't able to do that. So think about all the factors that are involved with that. We got positional modifications that we can make. Where are they sitting on the chair? In terms of, are they, tilted forward a little bit or back? Where are their arms when they're going to stand up? Are they utilizing momentum at all? Are they rocking forward? Just some of those different mechanics that we can easily, quickly change to get that early W. What about support modifications? Can you raise the seat height? That's a pretty simple one to do. Throw a pillow underneath their cushion. They can pop up, and you are then the best therapist they've ever had, just from that quick change and interaction. technique. Are they bracing? Are they, trying to actually brace to increase their, power production to be able to come up out of the chair? So some of these things that I know we may think is, we may take for granted or think it's, common sense, but we have an opportunity to do that with a lot of our patients to create quick change to get that early W. And I'll mention kind of a common one that I see is with assistive devices. So someone walks in the clinic or I'm going into their home, don't ever assume that their assistive device is correctly adjusted. I mean, if you've been working long enough in PT, you'll see all kinds of crazy stuff with people, their handles are all the way up to their chest and they're bent over, it's down to their knees. And I mean, it's pretty crazy to see how people get around with some of these walkers or canes. But in particular, the standard walker, this is a quick tip. I'll give it to you for free, but standard walker. All right. So when you get a standard or a rolling walker, 2 wheels in the front, the wheels are on the outside typically. And so what that does, it creates about 1.5 inches on either side to where it's a little wider than the frame. Now, for most people, it's not a big issue, but for a lot of people that are dependent on a walker, a lot of them may live in older homes that have more narrow doorways. So bathroom is a very common one. So they get up to the bathroom and what they have to do, they can't go straight into the doorway. They have to turn and do their little, side shuffle in and, almost lose their balance and fall, but they've been doing it for years. That's all they've known. Well, what you can do as a therapist, you can take those walkers that are on the outside and you can take them off and switch them so the wheels are on the inside of the frame. Now that narrows the base of support by about, 3 inches. Most of the time, that's not a big deal at all. You can test and retest that to see if that actually changed their walking ability. Excuse me. But often it doesn't. But what that 3 inches can allow them to walk straight into their bathroom, and then you are the best therapist they've ever had just for making that simple adjustment. So all that to say, all that rambling, I just want you to think, how can you make a quick change with your patients, even if they don't have pain? We have a great capacity to do that. Some of us are in the home with the patient, which, we have a very unique opportunity to be able to see, what they're struggling with, how we can use furniture, how we can, move rugs. We have a lot of options to work with. If you're an outpatient, it may not be that simple, but I don't want you to miss out on that quick change, that buy-in, building that therapeutic alliance and getting that early W that's going to allow you to recommend some things that they may not be comfortable with, like doing barbell deadlifts or back squats or farmer carries or some of these other things that we'll talk about on the Older Adult Wednesday podcast. So that's all I have for now. Thank y'all for listening. Ali, Shveta, good morning. If you have any questions or any things that you have used to get that early W, it'd be great to have kind of a dialogue on this Facebook post. So for the podcast listeners, go to the Institute of Clinical Excellence on Facebook. Look for this post. Look for the ugly, shaved head, bearded guy, and you'll see, hopefully some comments of some good, tips and tricks that you all use to get that early W. So you all have a lovely Wednesday, and I'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Hit me! Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, go to ptonice.com, click on the Courses tab, and check out Modern Management of the Older Adult. This is a course that myself and Christina Previtt are going to be teaching. It's 8 weeks, an online format, interactive, and solely focused on helping students change how they practice and how they work with older adults. For more information, just go to ptonice.com. Thanks.